Can you read the statement of certification of the meeting?
The meeting has been advertised according to sunshine law.
Please call the roll.
Chairman Venero,
Here.
Mayor Melham,
Here.
Mr. Zangari,
Here.
Mr. Conti,
Here.
Mr. Banda,
Here.
Mr. Bove,
Here.
Ms. Guaman,
Here.
Mr. Graziano,
Here.
Ms. Rico, not here, Ms. Inaugurato,
Here.
Mr. Guyen's,
Here.
Mr. Di Lorenzo,
Here.
Mr. Harretts,
Here.
and Ms. Tabito. I do see her, she's just muted.
Here, sorry.
Perfect, thank you.
Could I have a motion for the approval of the minutes for the November 19th, 2020 meeting?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Chairman Venero,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Banda,
Yes.
Mr. Bove,
Yes.
Mr. Graziano,
Yes.
Ms. Guaman,
Yes.
Ms. Inaugurato,
Yes,
Mr. Zangari,
Yes.
Mayor Melham,
Yes.
Ms. Rico is absent, and Mr. Guyen.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have an announcement. The resignation of our deputy chief, Mr. Corbo, has resigned from the planning board. I believe he's taken on some more duties as OEM director in the town, and his time is kind of limited, so he has resigned. And Mrs. Jackie Guaman is to fulfill the remainder of his term. And I'd just like to offer our condolences to Mr. Corbo, the passing of his mother-in-law, Ellie Strumolo, who was a wonderful individual and a pillar of our community. And welcome, Jack. I want to welcome you, Jackie. I mean, you were on a board, but now you're a Class 2 Planning Board member, the mayor's designee.
Thank you.
No, she's not the designee.
He's
No,
going
that's-
from designee to class 2.
Oh, I'm sorry, from designee to Class 2. Okay.
Correct.
Old business, we have resolutions to be memorialized. We have PB 2018, 14 Kuzo Street, OB 40 Ogle, approval to convert the existing 2-family dwelling into a 3-family dwelling, ground level, first floor to be a 2-bedroom apartment.
Ray, both of those resolutions are going to be held until the February meeting.
Okay. I guess we have a new business, but we have, should we announce the withdrawal of the first one, or you want to hear the first one, Rose?
We could do the first one.
Okay, we'll do it for, we have PB 2004, it's 632 Washington Avenue, block 9101, lots 9 and 10. JCR Benelli LLC, proposed redevelopment plan by CME Associates.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dean Donatelli here. How you doing? Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Corinne, can you hear me okay? Great. Happy New Year, everyone. Just for the record, my name is Dean Donatelli. I am the Special Redevelopment Counsel for the township. And before you on this matter, I'll just be brief, is over the past year or so, this property, as you all know, across from the motorcycle mall has been studied and declared an area in need of redevelopment. And what that culminates in is a redevelopment plan, which essentially sets forth the zoning for the property. The governing body, council, introduced the ordinance and the redevelopment plan on Tuesday. And then it is referred under the statute to the planning board for review of the plan consistency. So is prepared to discuss the the plan. And the role of the board is to kind of to make that determination and then make a recommendation to the governing body of that finding of consistency, and including any other recommendations or comments that the planning board deems appropriate. That's really all I have. I know you're familiar with this process. It would culminate in a letter from Ms. DeVito, a communication from Ms. DeVito to the governing body, to the township clerk, basically transmitting the conclusion of the and recommendations of the board. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I think Mary Ann is going to speak. Yep.
Yes. Okay. I can take it from there, and I don't like to repeat everything that's in the plan. What I'll do is highlight the unique characteristics of the plan and then ask if you have any questions. So what I would like to do is just give a brief overview of the plan and the site. So it's about 400 linear feet of frontage on Washington Avenue, a former industrial site that sits vacant. So the goal of the redevelopment plan is to develop this site in a way that's takes lemons and turns it into lemonade. That couldn't be done through regular zoning, and achieves, I think what this will achieve is something that's extremely unique, and another step forward for Belleville as far as design and mix of uses and potential for variety of uses and even special events. So the goal of the plan was to require a plaza that can be used for public use as well as the private owners and residences of the project. It'll be mixed use with ground floor retail and restaurants required, and upper story residential. There's an amenity package that's also required, and details in the plan that are over and above what you normally see in regular zoning to make sure that Belleville gets what they're promised as far as the redevelopment of. And you'll see in the plan as part of the appendices, and even within the text of the plan, there's outlines of a pseudo form-based requirement that requires the plaza in conjunction with any development on the site. And if you take a look at, I'm sure you did, the appendices, it will show the details for the design of the plaza and also details for conceptual layouts for the building that identifies essentially what you're going to get. So there's no bait and switch, and going forward, everything is part of the public hearing and the discussion before the planning board and the council. Because of that, there are a lot of things that were discussed and talked about, and a lot of details. So as with any other plan, as with anything, the last minute, some things always come up where the owner is looking to have some minor adjustments or requesting them of the board and the town, which you can choose to incorporate. But I think that they're all minor, and I wouldn't raise them if I didn't think that they were justified. So what I'd like to do is to run through those items and also describe the plan a little bit, and then ask any questions, see if there's any questions. I'll answer anything that you have, and then move on from there. Okay. As we move through the plan, what I'd like to do, let me open it up. I'm not sure if it would be helpful to share the screen. I don't really think it would, but maybe it would.
You have the ability to do
Yeah.
so, like Marianne.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful for some of it, but it's sort of my notes. But I don't want to be able to let you see. I don't want you to see text as we're running through. maybe what I can do is I'll start with this. So if I can share it, right?
Yes.
Don't know why it's not maximizing. Oh, there it is. Okay. So essentially, what was unusual about this site, one of the biggest components of this site that led it to need a redevelopment plan in order to move forward, was the unusual topography, that much of the site was well below Washington Avenue instead of right along the street as typical urban or suburban town center commercial street would be. So in order to develop here, you needed to be able to do a bigger building, or in a building that that had a little bit, was a lot more complicated than the typical building with commercial along Washington. So this, but it does allow for a lot of benefits that other sites don't have. So it allows for parking to be hidden underneath those portions of the site that's below grade. So when you look at the building from the street, you see retail on the ground floor and residential above, but in the back of the building, there's 2 extra levels below grade that are parking. And so because of that, it makes for a little more complicated of a building and complicated zoning, but I think overall a better product. This layout shows the first floor of how it would work, and there would be yellow would be the required retail, and the shaded area is the required plaza. This is decorative parking area to connect the plaza to Washington Street. Right here is my cursor is Washington Street, and the green would be the unit rental office and management office. So one of the other unique things of this plan is the idea that this plaza would be a public gathering space. It wouldn't be a private space that was just for residents or tenants of the location. It could be used for special events, outdoor events, and also special events by Belleville. So it's important that what's along that area is attractive and lively, and has high quality architectural materials and design components. Those are all required in the plan. One of the unique things that's also required in this plan is when you visualize that happening, you assume that there's going to be, whether it's a brew pub or a restaurant or a bar or some type of active open public uses along the plaza. Now, in any project, you can't really dictate what that's going to be, but because this is a redevelopment plan, you can say that some of those spaces do need to be a restaurant. Otherwise, you could end up with banks along the plaza, and it wouldn't be the vital destination spot that Belleville is looking to create. So as part of that requirement, this paragraph here requires that 2 of these 3 corners, this northern corner, this corner on the plaza, this other corner of the plaza, at least 2 of these contain a restaurant. And that's something that you have the ability to do in a redevelopment plan, but not in regular zoning. But without making this too stringent, one of the requests by the developer, and it is a reasonable request, because this is a planning board case, and because this is a redevelopment plan, there's no use variances that are able to be granted in a redevelopment plan that goes before the planning board. So the uses that are specified here need to be flexible enough to make sure that it's something that the planning board can grant. So that needs to be stated in here, that if for any reason, given COVID, say, as an example, that might be an extreme enough reason, in the future, when this is built, if 2 restaurants are not possible, a variance for that could be asked for by the planning board. And I'd like to make sure that there's no misinterpretation of this plan going forward, I'd like to add that to this paragraph right after the word amenities here. And it would basically say, if the planning board finds that circumstances exist to justify replacement of the required restaurants with retail, the developer may request this by providing the justification required for a deviation from this plan. And that way, there's enough flexibility to not stop the project from happening, but make sure that it's suitable for given the time that it moves forward. I don't think that's likely, but anytime we create legislation or regulation, we want to make sure that it's fair and flexible enough to be useful. And working with your redevelopment attorney and the applicant's attorney, we think that this will satisfy that request and that requirement. One of the other unique components of this project is a generalization of retail uses, so that the uses that are listed as retail are inclusive of many things. And the only retail uses that are not permitted are those that are listed as prohibited. Some of the prohibited uses are typical uses that we're trying to take off the avenue, used car sales, and auto repair, and so those types of uses, and they include, by the nature, any vehicle sales and truck sales and motorcycle sales as well. But given that this project is associated with the motorcycle mall across the street, there was an idea that some of this of the retail area could possibly use for display, kind of a nice hip opportunity to provide display cases for some of the recreational vehicles in conjunction with some of the other activities going on in the plaza and along the plaza. So they requested that that be accommodated here. So that was written in as 10% of the retail ground floor area. I wrote that in without knowing realistically what might be needed or will be used for that. They have requested that that be changed to, instead of showrooms greater than 10% of the retail ground floor area, I actually think that it would be best to put in a square footage, and that square footage would be no greater than 5,500 square feet of retail ground floor area, as per their request. The second item is parking, very minor. On the parking standards, there is charging stations that are required. This is also very cutting edge and over and above what's normally required. I had 4 per level, but I think that that was much more than is typical. So the request has been to make that 2 per level with the 1 high speed charging station outside, and allow for their internal, for them to add more charging stations internally as needed by their residents. And I don't have a problem with that. They also asked that the bike ratio be changed from every 2 dwelling units to 1 bike storage spot for every 3 dwelling units. One of the, another minor change which they have incorporated into their plan designs, that you'll see as a appendice in the back of the plan, is based on other projects that they have done in other areas. They have requested to increase the percentage of 2-bedroom units from 20% to 40%. And they have provided data that shows how that will impact the town and the project. One of the other standards that they've requested, which is also minor, let's see, we're on page 12, is utilities. We don't have to watch them. Let me go to, let me see. Hold on, guys. Okay. You don't need to see this portion of it. In the utilities section, section E utilities, I wanted to add one, a line which is identifies transformers that they may be located outside in the rear of the project only if they're fenced and screened. There was an item on page 14 for balconies where there's glass balconies shown in the renderings. They're very, very attractive. The rendering itself is very attractive. Get to that page for you. Here we go. That's happening. Okay. Okay. So there's glass balconies on this portions of the sides and the front. It wasn't clear from the text. Excuse me. Something is stuck in my eye. It wasn't clear from the text, apparently, according to some people that were reading this, that the balconies, the glass balconies were required on the Washington Street frontage and along the plaza.
Avenue.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I keep saying that.
That's all right.
I lived on a Washington Street, so I keep saying that.
No problem.
And they are different in the back, and they're allowed to be different in the back. But I wanted there was a request to just put the word Washington corners and plaza frontage for the glass. And then the only other, let me see, what else do I have here? Item 15 on the design standards on page 14. There's a section that talks about no greater than 30 feet for changes in articulation of the building. And along the rear of the building, they went a long way working very closely with Belleville to try and come up with fancier features so that what happened in the past doesn't happen in the back and the rear of the buildings, so that the rear has a lot of detailing in it as well. There's portions of the rear that are flat, even though they have different features. And right back here, there's all balcony because they have all views back out over towards the city in the east and along the recreation area on the top of the garage. That area does not have that articulation. So that area would be excluded from that requirement. And then the other thing would be to add some plan dimensions to some of the figure 1 that talks about the size of the plaza and other things. They're in the text, but I think we're going to just add them also to the figure so it's easier for people to see when they look at the plan. And I think that's all of the comments that came back from the developer. And I didn't receive any other further comments from Belleville, but we could go through some of these features in the plan. I think that they're extremely well thought through, extremely attractive, and this is going to be an exciting project. It went from a project that was a typical retail strip center with two residential buildings to a mixed use building with parking hidden and a public plaza with a full amenity package for Belleville. And I think that's a huge plus. If anybody has any questions, I'm gonna get a tissue and I will, just have to, excuse me a second. I can answer your questions. I can also stop sharing the screen if you want, because I don't really need to have that on there.
You could leave it up. I mean, I like looking at it. That's fine.
Okay,
So Mary Ann, the total units is 268, is that correct?
yeah, it's the number, 1 second. I don't know. For some reason, I'm sitting in a different location today for this meeting. And for some reason, I'm having like an allergic reaction in
Oh,
here.
boy.
So yes, and approximately 19,000 square feet of commercial space.
And you said the original plan called for 20%, 2 bedrooms, and now they want 40%?
I'm not sure what the original plan had. Their plan that is attached here, this scenario does show, if you look at one of the pages, then they submitted this and it's been and it has been looked at here. Let me make that bigger. Let's get rid of this. This is sort of almost a colorful concept, but it does have numbers in there, and it does accommodate for 40% 2 bedrooms, which would be about 100, like 105, 107 2-bedroom units. And the original plan did have, I'm not sure what, there is a plan that's approved for this site. I just don't remember what the mix was for that. But it's possible that they could ultimately do less. But the redevelopment standards, like I said, we try to I say over control, but micromanage some development. And a lot of times, sometimes that is too much. I mean, it's one thing to micromanage the design and force amenities and force community improvements that benefit Belleville, but there's sometimes the mix can interfere with the viability of the project. And this developer has come up with providing us with examples of the bedroom mix they've done in other places, and satisfied really the concern that I had. And if you want to discuss that further, I can share that with you as well. But I think that given the complexity of this project and all of the unique features that they've added here, accommodating the mix that they feel that they need to make the project go forward is an important component.
Mr. Banda, do you recall the Washington and William Street project, what percentage 2 bedrooms that plan was?
I don't. I'd have to look it up. I think it wasn't 40 though. 40 is a little high.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure all members are just concerned that, the impact of school systems. And I know that the developer always tell you that, school-age children don't live in apartments, but when you're having over 100 2-bedroom units, that's just a concern of mine. I don't know how any other members feel, but over 100 2 bedrooms. Anybody else care to say anything?
Hey, Chairman,
Yes.
Mayor Melham here. So the 40% 2-bedroom is, in my opinion, aggressive. That's I don't think that's kind of the ratio that we were looking for. To my opinion, it is a bit aggressive. And to your point, we always get statistics and facts from developers that show us why it's not an issue. And, obviously that information is always biased, but I think 40% is a little aggressive in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other members want to weigh in what their feelings are about 40% of 2-bedroom units?
If I can, Mr. Chairman, Mary Ann said something interesting where the push for certain amenities causes the project to be so expensive that the developer needs to increase the units, increase the size of the units. I think it's a beautiful project. but I've said this before about other projects. I think 268 units is just explosive to me. I think it's huge. And the 2-bedroom units, again, that number is huge. It's a beautiful building. I don't know that I could even find the flaw with anything that's been designed there, other than, to me, it's just, again, too high a density, too many units, and certainly too many 2-bedroom units. But once again, when you push the developer to build a very high-end building and accommodate all that you want in terms of those amenities, then he has no choice but to upgrade and enlarge the property so that he could make a profit, which is what he's there for. So I don't know what that mix is. And Marianne, you said it well, there is a mix, but somehow, to me, again, these projects are just getting too large, too dense, too many people. I love the way the thing looks. I mean, I don't think I could find a flaw in that, but my only objection is to how big this thing has gotten, and it's huge to me.
So just if you want to see it, since they did do it, and we asked for it, we kind of demanded it. They did provide us with details of 2-bedroom units for projects that they have, 2 projects that they have in Kearney, that end up actually was not even just a sample of a past project. They gave us data from 2017 and 2000, actually it's 2018. And the actual age of the children and the number of 2-bedroom units and the number of 2-bedroom units with children and the actual ages of each child within those projects. And it turns out that there was approximately, for every 100 2-bedroom units, one project had an average of 10 school children per, and the other project had an average of 16 per 100 units. So it basically means that for every 100 units, for one of the projects, it was 56 2-bedroom units, and there were 6 school children. And it was detailed. The information that was provided was not just looking at some ITE standard. It was real data from real usage in a comparable location. And so based on this information, it seems, I mean, you never know for sure, but it would appear that it's probably between 10 and 16 school children that would come out of 100 2-bedroom units. And when that's spread across grades for high school and grammar school, it's not a significant increase. There's always an increase when you increase building. And even if you did 20%, you would still have some school children. But I think when you look at it that way, the difference between 20 and 40, you're talking between 5 and 8. That's the difference in the number of kids. So I thought it was a rational request, given how much time and basically accommodations were made by the developer in working with the community to make this project better.
And
Venero,
the building is absolutely beautiful. I mean, I love the design. I think that'll really enhance Belleville, up that part of Washington Avenue. It's just the 40% of 2 bedrooms. I kind of have a problem with.
Mr. Venero, may I?
Ryan, how do you feel?
You
Or Tom, you got a comment, Mr.
Tom.
Graziano?
Yeah, I agree with you with the design is beautiful. I love the layout. And I also agree with the 40% high. Is there a way that number, are they willing to come down with that number? I mean, is there a happy medium here?
Well, one of the things that you have to think of is we're only talking about legislation. I mean, obviously, they probably have a site plan that they're ready to move forward with that may probably meet the 40%. But this is legislation. So if you adopt something that's less, if you say go 35% or something like that, that means that if they don't meet that amount, they would be asking for a deviation when they came in with the site plan. I mean, there's still the ability to ask for an adjustment. And then they would be the ones making the argument when it came time for that. But I think given the details that they did accommodate every request from Belleville and the redevelopment team for all of their details. They basically shared construction materials, and they were very open and about what they're planning to do, and they did not hold back or try and hide any of it. And I think if that's their product and that's what they've done in some places, I mean, you have to take it for what it is. Every site is different. This site, I think, because it's almost 10 acres, because it has that extra parking area that's below. Parking is not an issue here. They're overparked, in my opinion. They have adequate access. And it is a large building, but it's really almost 2 buildings. And a very large amount of the area is put towards a public component. It makes it balance. It does make a difference in that sense. It's not just a small project that's going to try and pack in families and kids. That's not what this is. This is a destination mixed use, really almost with a park element, with a public park, even though it's in a plaza form. It fits in with all the goals of the new master plan addition that we talked about, adding vibrancy to the neighborhood, to the community, creating a destination, adding better architecture, and with all kinds of visual cues and advanced components, adding in the amenities and the streetscape. They've pretty much really touched on everything, even the sustainable components of incorporating the charging stations and bicycles. So, I would recommend that you could go forward with this and try it. And you know what? In this, if there's any chance that because taking the position that 40% it's high, and that you're concerned about it is one thing, but then actually going out and seeing how many kids are in those units and testing it out is something that should be done too. And maybe this is the project, especially if they're going to go forward and build this, that if you do allow it, you can test it and you can require them to report back, and you can gauge and see how many children come out of this. And if it's a lot more, then Belleville is an area that can't be compared to Kearney and will be, but it may turn out that it's even less. And it may turn out that you'll find out exactly what number of school children, new 2-bedroom units in a building like this would produce. And that's the only way to find out.
Mary Ann?
Yeah.
So this is the mayor. Chairman, if I could just interject again, please.
Yes.
So, yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I mean, I do think the 40% is aggressive. Do I think it's a deal breaker for me? I don't think so. I have reviewed the information from the developer. Obviously, as I said before, I'm always hesitant when we get clearly biased information because it's coming from one side. But that said, I do have information from the state of New Jersey that says that, over the last 8 or 10 years, Belleville has lost approximately 238 kids, and that they are trending Belleville as downward as far as family size and as far as impact to the school. So, I don't, and I want to reiterate what Mary Ann said. This has been a long process with us and our redevelopment team. And, the group that we're dealing with and on the other side of for this has been absolutely very accommodating to us. mostly every single request we made of them. They've been very forthcoming and very accommodating too. And while I do think that 40% is aggressive, to me, that's not a deal breaker. I mean, I live in a 2-bedroom condo and I don't have any kids. The 3 bedrooms is what we have to watch out for. And we certainly want to keep the 2 bedrooms on the lower side. It's not necessarily a deal breaker for me, although I did say it was aggressive for me, but I have to say that the trends that we have, and I can email that information to members of the board tomorrow from the state of New Jersey, that says that Belleville is trending downward for family size. And, it's not necessarily a deal breaker for me. And again, I want to reiterate what Mary Ann said, the team that we're dealing with on the other side of this project has been nothing but accommodating to us. And we've asked them for a lot. And, it's not necessarily a deal breaker for me, although, for future projects, I would say that 40% would be a flag for me. That's for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I can, go ahead, who's, someone else?
Yeah, and Andrew, Mr. Conte, I just wanted to add one, just kind of some background. This is Dean Donatelli. I wanted to, I think Mr. Conte, I think the mayor said it best, and being part of the redevelopment team, I agree with what the mayor said, and also with what the town's planner said as well. I just want to kind of put it in context. And Mr. Conte, I think you said it well. Also, because in the redevelopment context, you have the ability to really tell the developer or ask the developer what the town is looking for, and you see the product that that was going to be delivered, and the higher quality finishes you get, and the more contributions they give, public space, and the ability to use portions of the development. But in the redevelopment context, you get to ask for those things, and you also get to govern the number of bedrooms. And the reason I mention that is in a normal land use application, the board knows you generally don't get into bedroom counts or those types of things, because it's not traditional zoning. So I think you really do need to balance, as the mayor and Mary Ann said, those things which we're getting, which make the project, go into the budget, versus those things which are kind of necessary. I'll say there's no 3 bedrooms, but the 2 bedrooms would be necessary. I think from the developer's view, to kind of make the project viable from a design perspective and the contributions to the town. Thank you.
I don't really personally have so much of a problem with the 2 bedrooms. As we move forward, as a township, and we have quite a few projects on the board and quite a few coming, my concern, which I voiced to other members in conversations, is that how many units are we going to construct in town? And are we going to centralize them in a handful of locations, or are we going to try to distribute them somewhat even-handedly up and down the avenue, which we're trying to improve? So when we put 268 units in one spot, and again, I love the project. I'm looking at it. I think it would be a beautiful thing over there. Again, I wish it wasn't so many units, but we have other projects coming up. So then I asked the question, well, how many units do we plan on building in this town? And then we start to move our population levels. And I'm not even that concerned about the student levels. I'm not, and I never have been. But we start to move our population and traffic and different, at some point you do start to need more police and fire. When you add 5, 6, 7,000 people to a town of 37,000, you add 15%, 18% of the population, you are going to start to impact the town in ways. And I don't care how fancy the buildings are. At some point, the market's going to dry up. The apartments are going to be empty. So I ask, looking forward, where do we start to cap these units? We wanted to expand the height and the depth and the densities to instigate some construction, which we have done successfully. But going forward, there's got to be some limit to how many units we're going to build in town before we even see what the impact is for what we're already approved. And this in the end is a yes vote for me. It is. But going forward, we have to start to limit what we're going to build here, or else we're going to definitely add 4,000 units to the town in a short period of time. And that's a recipe potentially for problems at some point. You know, we could wind up with high vacancy rates, which could cause developers to do drastic things. You know, we could have a lot of empty storefronts, you know, like I always say, a lot of art galleries. And I'm just saying, going forward, I understand why the project got so big. I do. But if we're going to negotiate that with every developer, we're going to run into trouble. And then I will start to be opposed to some of these developments. But I'm looking at a bigger picture. And you know, when I look at this again, I don't find any flaws in it, but it is dense. It's very dense.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Any other board members have anything they'd like to add? Mary Ann, is there anything else?
No, I have nothing else to say.
I just want to say, you know, I think the 40% of 2 bedrooms is a bit high. But like Mr. Conti says, you're looking at these plans, it's a first-class building, premium materials. I guess the trade-off is, you know, you have to make money with the project. And to me, I think it would definitely improve Washington Avenue, and it's an improvement for Belleville. So I think the trade-off, in my opinion is worth it. If any other board members have any question or comment they'd like to make, if not, we'll open it up to the public. Anybody in the public have a question or comment?
Yes, Michael Sheldon, 47 Floyd Street.
Yes, Mr. Sheldon.
All right, a few things. First of all, the previously approved project by the planning board about 1.5 years ago, has that now officially been scrapped? That involved 135 units total in the 2 buildings. And if I remember correctly, it was going to also have 86 2-bedroom units. But I know the overall number of the previously approved project was 135. So you're now essentially doubling that from 135 to 268. I just wanted a confirmation. The previous project now is null and void.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I could help answer that question, Mr. Chairman, if it would help.
Yes.
Yeah, so what would happen, we're in the redevelopment, we're in the zoning phase now, Mr. Sheldon. So what would happen is the next step would be, if the ordinance were to be adopted by the governing body, then the applicant obviously would have to go forward with a site plan approval. And what they would do as part of that process, site plan approval for this project, and it's basically what it's probably going to be what you see today, and they would basically withdraw the prior approval from the property and agree to proceed with the new site plan approval.
Okay, thank you. With this new project, is there any so-called age-restricted units, or is this all fair market construction?
It's all market.
It's all market. Okay, thank you. I wanted to thank Mr. Venero for correcting Ms. Bucci Carter earlier on that it's Washington Avenue and not Washington Street. For those of us who spent a large portion of our lives in places like Hoboken obviously does have a Washington Street, and it kind of sends chills up my spine, at least when I hear outside interests calling our Washington Avenue Washington Street, because the fear is that we're about to largely transform our Washington Avenue into Hoboken's Washington Street. In regard to the impact that the 107 proposed 2-bedroom units may have on our district, Mr. Mellon mentioned a few moments ago that he has some state report indicating that there's going to be a downward trend in the school population here in Belleville. I don't believe that for a minute. Let me just tell you guys, granted, I'm no longer on the Board of Ed. My term ended as of January 4th. But as we entered the current school year, which obviously is complicated by the COVID crisis, at one point, as we were getting to late August and early September, our school population at that point had shot up by over 200. we went from 4,500 to over 4,700. Dr. Tomko was scrambling with my help to try to figure out why we had seen such a dramatic, unexpected increase. But when everything calmed down, we had over 100 additional kids added to our school district this year. We went from a little over 4,500 to well over 4,600. The reason why that's kind of masked at this point in time is because of COVID. We're doing this hybrid model, and actually the kids have been doing remote once again from the middle of November until next week. So it's largely escaped public attention that we had a very significant increase. We've added over 100 kids to our school district in this 1 year. And that's consistent with what our demographers, Whitehall Associates, predicted a couple years ago. And that was before all of these large projects were even a gleam in the eye of the developers. So, you know, I don't welcome or approve what Mr. Mellum said, that he has information that there's going to be a downward trend. Talk to Dr. Tomko, talk to our actual demographers. We're seeing a predicted increase in the school population, and that's without projects like this on Washington Avenue, or the one on Franklin Avenue, or the other one on Washington Avenue, which has 156 units. I wanted to hold Ms. Bucci Carter to task when she said, "Well, let's go ahead and build this. If it's a problem, if we see more school kids than we think will happen, then this will have some impact on future construction." But the fact of the matter is, because of the planning board's current proclivity, you're simultaneously approving a whole bunch of these large projects. All of these projects are likely to come online essentially simultaneously. So what are you going to do then when you have 4, 5, 6 buildings like this already constructed? What are you going to do? Draw straws and tell certain developers, "Oh, we goofed. You're going to have to take some of your buildings down because we underestimated the impact of the school system." This is a dangerous experiment Ms. Bucci Carter is advocating, and she almost said so, you know, in a joking manner. This she doesn't live here. We do. This is our lives for decades to come. So you planning board members need to be a little bit more cognizant of what your decisions now, all of these large scale projects that you're approving, the cumulative effect that they could have overnight. Mr. Conti made mention of this just a few moments ago, his concern that you're going over the line and improving too many large projects too quickly. There's got to be a proper staging of projects like this to fully assess what they're going to do to our township across the board. Now, getting back to some of the nitty gritties of this plan, it was mentioned in the beginning of the discussion that there's a plaza that's going to be publicly available. On the one diagram, I believe it was page 10 of what Ms. Bucci Carter shared, the plaza extends from Washington Avenue into the interior aspect of the building. There are 2 parking lots on either side of the plaza along parallel to Washington Avenue. Can cars traverse the plaza, or does the plaza itself represent a barrier that only pedestrians can use? And does that mean then those 2 parking lots in the front have to, you can't move across the plaza area? The parking flow has to be out to Washington Avenue? And will those parking spots in the front section along parallel to Washington Avenue, are those spots for people using the retail aspect of this building, or will those parking spots be used by residents of the building? I haven't heard any discussion so far about how many spots are being reserved for residents, how many spots are being allocated for people who may want to attend whatever retail will be inside of this building. So can there be some discussion of that what is the traffic? Thank you. That's the diagram I was referring to. I wanted to know if the
I can
lots
answer that.
left and right, can cars move across the plaza, or is the
I
plaza
can answer that.
blocked
Yeah.
from
I'm
cars?
gonna look at my cursor. This is the plaza is between the buildings here. This
Mhm.
area is the plaza between the buildings, and then it extends with decorative surface treatment across the parking lot. So that for special events, the entire area, this all can be used for special events, and it'll be at a pedestrian level. But on normal days, this is where the pedestrian areas and the sidewalk around, and this will be the parking lot. The outside parking here is obviously going to be reserved. It doesn't have to be reserved for, but it will be for the retail usage. And the parking for the residents is underneath the building, accessed here and through the back.
Okay,
So, and also, well, yeah, so, and also just to answer some of the other that you raised earlier, there are a lot of options in there about construction and timing. And I think you can't jump to those kind of conclusions. But what I would like to say is to make sure that you didn't misconstrue my suggestion is that what I believe should be done is that any new construction that happens in Belleville, even for projects, whether they were 0% or if they were all 1 bedrooms, even if they were 20% 2 bedrooms, is to require that those be monitored for to see the usage, and to monitor to see what actually is happening and how many school children are being being added to the system, or maybe not added, and to really look at how much is lost, as the mayor is talking about, and just keep those records. I think that there's nothing wrong with what I suggested. I think that's the prudent path to take. You have the opportunity because you have new construction, so take that opportunity and monitor the tenancies and see what you actually get.
I understand your point, but we could let the cat out of the bag if it turns out hypothetically. We're all talking about hypotheticals here based on what may or may not be happening in other communities which aren't Belleville. But if we wind up in the extreme that I'm worried about, where the 2-bedroom units don't generate just 10 or 20 kids, but perhaps 50, 60, or 70, that's going to then represent a serious impact on the Belleville School District. In fact, when this project, the first version of it was before the planning board a year and a half ago, when it was just 135 units with 86 2-bedroom units, I brought up this Rutgers Center for Real Estate study, which the board members themselves have cited several times. And for that project, if you did the calculation on page 3 of that Rutgers Center for Real Estate, that their modeling predicted that the 135 unit structure could produce upwards of 60 kids in the school system. A lot of this is contingent upon whether the building is considered mid-rise, high-rise, the income levels, whether you're below 50, between 50 and 100, or above $100,000. The table structure changes radically.
And that's actually why I'm saying don't follow the path of the hypothetical, or clearly you have the opportunity to evaluate the real life outcome, and you shouldn't be afraid of hypothetical when you have the ability to look at the real outcome and what's really going on.
Because this is somewhat of an experiment, a test, I would suggest something which I know will be laughed at immediately, as I normally am by the planning board members. But if this project gets approved, would the planning board say, well, all right, we're going to put a moratorium on similar construction in Belleville until we see how this particular building plays out in the next 5 to 7 years? And if it doesn't have any significant impact on the school system or other aspects of the township's functions, then we know this is a worthwhile thing to do, and we'll then consider additional projects like this. I don't think so. I think that there's going to be a mad rush, especially over the next 1 to 2 years, to put up a whole bunch of buildings just like this one, and they're all going to come to fruition essentially simultaneously. We're going to wake up one day and find the township literally inundated with buildings like this, with the township's population increasing from 37,000 to upwards of 50,000, and there's really then nothing that can be done at this point. People
All
are
right.
going to, but that's all right. I'm going off on a tangent. Let me
Yes,
go
yes.
back to my question. In the plan, the current drawing that's on the screen, there's a beautiful pool, and I agree with the planning board members. The design of this building is spectacular. It would be a wonderful aesthetic improvement to Belleville, as long as it doesn't come with other costs. But this building has a pool in the rear southeast section. I assume that pool is for residents only. That's not going to be a shared feature, as is the plaza. Is that correct? The pool is for residents only?
That's correct, and that's typical.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to kind of just put this in context, and I appreciate the questions, but this is not, I mean, maybe the plans, the efforts and the detail that the developer put into this are deceiving the public. This is not a site plan application. So the details like parking and who uses the parking spaces, although it may be known, and who uses the pool, that is not, there is a time for that, but it isn't now. That comes at the time of the site plan application. Currently, the floor, with all due respect to the chairman and Mr. Vito and the board, the role here is to determine whether this zoning ordinance is consistent with the master plan and any recommendations related to that, not to determine who uses the pool. It's just not. We wouldn't ask the developer to be prepared to answer that question, nor is it the appropriate time to do it. I just wanted to add that, and I think, Mayor, I think it's important to say that you need to keep this within the context of what your current zoning is, and I believe the density of this project is similar to the density of what you have in the underlying zoning. So I think we probably could answer all the questions of the detailed and the site plan related things, but it's not really I would respectfully say it's not really the appropriate time for it. This is the zoning ordinance. It's not a site plan application.
Thank you, Mr. Donatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Donatelli, as well. I keep having to remind myself that this isn't, you're not looking for site plan approval here. This is just a concept essentially for what could happen with this being a redevelopment zone.
It's essentially a zoning ordinance with a lot of detail. So it's great that you're asking those questions, because you're getting out of it what you should in the redevelopment process. It shows the process is working, but it's not really fair to ask those questions at this stage, because we're not, the legislation isn't even in place yet. It's in the process. So, I mean, they're all great questions, but I just don't, I think we're a little ahead of ourselves at the moment.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Last thing then, I know the Resniti family owns this property, but who is the developer? Is the developer Mr. Resniti, or is there some other party or parties who are the developers for this? And if so, could I have the names of the developers?
Currently, the property is owned by an entity that is affiliated with the Resnitis. But in terms of who, there is no developer at this point. There's just a property owner. That's all we have. There's no designated redeveloper. Again, we don't even have the legislation in place yet. So you can find out from the public records who the property owner is. And to my understanding, it's an affiliate of the Resnitis. That's all I know.
All right. Okay. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Sure.
Is there any other members of the public that have a question or comment they'd like to make?
Yeah, Ray, Vic Mafucci.
Go ahead, Vic.
I know it's not a site plan, but as it's proposed, the pool would be above a parking lot?
Yes, it would be on the top
Ground.
level.
Yeah.
above a level of parking.
Yeah.
There'll be 2 levels of parking below it.
Right. Okay. On the beginning where you had the permitted uses, did it say manufacturing is a permitted use
No,
or non-permitted?
manufacturing was excluded. It said all retail and non-manufacturing. Yeah.
Non-manufactured.
Yeah, I think without pulling it up, I don't remember exactly what it
that's
said.
okay.
But
I didn't know if
manufacturing,
it said permitted or non-permitted.
no, definitely not.
Other than that, it does look like a terrific site. Proposal, excuse me. All right. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vic. Any other members of the public? If no other members of the public have a question or comment, we'll close the public portion. Marion, would you like to do a summation or?
Hey, if I could, I need
Go
to
ahead.
ask, one question is kind of ringing in my ear. So I understand how we got from 135 to 268 units, that the town requested certain things of this developer, and he needed to, let's say, increase the number of units to make the project feasible. I don't see any finishes on the building that are really any different than every other development that we have been approving or starting to look at, smaller units, some of the larger units. Everybody's more or less in compliance with what's here, different brick, wood, glass, whatever. I keep hearing that we're going to have public use of the plaza. And so one question I have is, how much public use of the plaza are we getting? How often can that plaza be used? In other words, the town's getting a good looking building, which it's gotten out of every developer so far that we've been involved with. So other than a good looking building, which would be required by all, what is it that the town's getting that we're giving up an extra 135 units for?
Well, I can try and answer that, but Dean may be also probably the point person for that. Because this is zoning and it's a redevelopment plan, which is essentially zoning, the plan can get into detail and say that, so everyone knows that the use of that space will be public and private. So it'll be publicly accessible 24/7. But the details of that would have to be worked out in with the redevelopment agreement, and the frequency of events that Belleville can have per year would be stipulated at that time. So that's something that the council would have to finalize and identify and approve as part of the developer's agreement. That would be outside the role of the planning board. But as far as stating that that's part of the requirement of anybody who develops on this site, that they would enter into an agreement with Belleville and the Belleville Council to utilize this space a certain number of times a year, that's how it would go.
So
I couldn't answer.
Besides the aesthetics then, which like I say, to some degree, we've gotten out of every other developer, it's the use of the plaza, which has caused this project to take as long as it has taken to get before us, cause the developers to completely reconstruct the whole site. And in that, we're doubling the, is that what I'm supposed to understand? We have use of the plaza. That's a good deal.
So, Mr. Conti, sorry, I had this, my iPad was about to run out of battery, so I didn't want to drop off. I can add a little bit more detail. And I think Mary Ann started off her presentation with, one of the most challenging things about, and I'm not advocating, I'm just kind of telling you, trying to tell you the kind of what we've seen in the history a little bit. We had a relatively, I don't know, not such a desirable or not as nice as this plan previously. And a big function of that, that was a result of the topography. There was a reason to put the parking in the front because of the way the site laid out. So I know one of the driving factors in terms of cost, and I'm not a developer, was the putting all the parking in the back and opening up the front of the building. Back and on the bottom, obviously, it's a structured parking. So I think it's a challenging site from that perspective. So that would be one thing. You're correct. There would be obviously a traditional public easement, for the public to use the space. That would be that's what we've agreed on that already. In concept, there's no redevelopment plan in place because there's no redeveloper yet. But we've discussed with the property owner, the idea of obviously a public easement for the public use, and then the usage of that for public events if there's an event sponsor or the town that wants to use it. So that is another contribution. There's also, we anticipate, working with the developer on potential offsite, improvements or contributions, which would benefit. We expect it to benefit the Washington Avenue right away and the street frontage, and the quality of the building. Although it's deceiving, I mean, I'm not a builder, but like the ceiling heights on the first floor, you notice Mary Ann pushed to get a particular, it looks good because there's a lot of good, and that just, from what I understand, that drives up the cost. The PTAC units, and you'll notice the elevation doesn't have any, you can't see any PTAC units on the facade. So there's a particular, you can't see any the rooftop equipment and things like that. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head, but those things drive up the cost of the project, and we kind of have to, we work with the developer to kind of make the project better, and that as a result of that, it gets more expensive, and as a result, I think more expensive, more costly, and then the density. I think the density here is more or less consistent with your BG zoning. So this is kind of what you've encouraged on the underlying zoning, and this is kind of what you're going to get. And even in the underlying zoning, you would not be in a position to dictate. I don't want to go back to bedrooms, but you wouldn't be really in a position to dictate bedroom distribution. So, again, I'm not advocating, but I'm just we kind of work with what the information that we get. That I hope that helps.
Question, a little.
Hey,
bit-
Andy?
Yes.
I'm sorry, if I could just put in for 1 second, Mayor Melham here. I just sent, I don't know if I can't share my screen. I don't know if Dean or Mary Ann can, but I just want to remind the planning board as to what the original approved building looked like. And Mary Ann or Dean, if you guys can share your screen. The approved building that if we did absolutely nothing, this is what the building would look like. This was what was prior approved, and they had a right to build it as is. So in us dealing with this team that we've been dealing with now for 2 years and coming up with the concepts we did, that's what changed. This was an approved project that you're looking at right now. They could have built that without anybody. They had the approval to build this project that you're looking at. And because they've worked with us for over 2 years, negotiating every little detail, you now, and Marianne, if you could just show now the current version, you see the difference. And that's because of what we've dealt with and just talking to them for 2 years. And that's what we've negotiated. So just to answer your question a little bit, you had the prior screen that you just saw, that could have been built without anybody. They had approval to build that, but because they've worked with us over 2 years, we now got what you're seeing now. And it did cost us extra units in the meantime. There's no doubt about that. But I think before and after, that building that you just saw was approved for this particular site. And because of our work for 2 years and dealing with them, we now have what you're looking at now. I think that was worth, in my opinion, the extra units that the developer needed to build what we want to build.
And I don't disagree with that, because I think we're all happy with the design, thrilled with the design. One last question I have with the redevelopment plan. So some of the details of the redevelopment plan don't come until after we approve this. Basically, once we approve this area needed redevelopment, they are approved for the number of units, more or less. And I want to say this design. What if, how does it work if you can't get agreement on the usage of the plaza or whatever different agreements that would be in the redevelopment plan? What occurs then?
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I can address that question, Andy,
Yes.
what we would do is, so So right now we have the area in need of redevelopment designated. This is the ordinance which becomes the zoning for it, which is, as you can see, detailed. And then it goes back to the governing body. It's a good question. Between now and the 26th of January 26th, which is when the next council meeting is, at that time, there would be an adoption of the ordinance, which would make this zoning, put the zoning in effect.
Right.
Before that time, we are going to we're going to negotiate with the property owner and sign a redevelopment agreement, which would, we would negotiate a redevelopment agreement, and included in that redevelopment agreement would be some of the things that I had mentioned or that were mentioned earlier, the use of the plaza, if any improvements to Washington Avenue, the jitney, the meters, whatever it is that the council deems appropriate or the administration deems appropriate. And if we can't come to an agreement on that redevelopment agreement, then I would suspect that the governing body would not move forward with adopting the redevelopment plan. So basically, the ordinance would not become effective. So this isn't the end of the road. This is kind of the second step in the process. It goes back to the governing body, and before it's adopted, we're going to get all those things in place so that we're sure the town's going to get what the redeveloper has in concept agreed. The old property owner, I should say, has agreed to.
I would advise not to push the developer too much, because if you have too many events there, you're going to interfere with any restaurants and stores. I mean, it's a beautiful area, and if you disrupt business too often with events, it could become a problem to the retailers that I'm sure are going to be paying a hefty monthly rent, and the people that want to go to those locations. So I would hope you don't negotiate too many events there. It is a beautiful plaza, and they need to make money. Those establishments that eventually settle into those. Or what are we looking? We said maybe 2 restaurants in that location. Was that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
How big is the plaza? How many square feet is the plaza?
It's I should know offhand. It's about 60 by 90.
Yeah, it's not that big. So you put some outdoor dining, and you can't disrupt that on a regular basis for town events. Yeah, I'm just making that point.
The other advantage, I mean, from the new approach to this is getting people there. So if it becomes a destination place, a place where people will go to sit outside and have some coffee and work on their computer, and then maybe a yoga class going on there or something like that, those kind of things they're attractive for the businesses, and they attract more people. So that's the idea, is to set it up as a destination.
All right.
And a new asset for Belleville.
Any other members have any further last questions? Oh,
hi guys. Hi, Ray. This is Lawrence. I can actually see the restaurants probably using the space more than the residents do of Belleville for their own events and stuff like that, for things like that.
Yes, and that's an option for them as well. Yeah. And they can have as many as they want. I mean, the agreement would require them to allow Belleville to have some as well.
So if say for instance, the restaurant is holding something on the plaza, but Belleville wanted to hold something, who would take precedence then?
Well, those are the kinds of things that would be worked out in the use agreement for the redevelopment agreement. Those would be worked out. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think conceptually it would be like the town. I believe the township, and we're looking into this. The township has a one-time use permit, which would allow. This isn't exactly what it would say, but be modeled similar to. They would let the property owner know there's either an event organizer who'd like to use the space, or the town would like to use the space. They would communicate with the property owner. Obviously you protect the property owner, to Mr. Conti's point, protect the property owner from, too much. If there's any damage done, indemnifications, those things would need to be addressed, and it would have to be coordinated and with the property owner and either the event sponsor or the town. So that would all be kind of, we've begun to kind of model language. I think will work. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other members? If not, Mary Ann, is there a summation you'd like to make, or are you finished?
My summation is, I think this is one of the best plans I've ever seen. So, I don't have anything else to say.
All right.
I
I just have a question. Rose, you there? Mr. Vito?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, Mary Ann had listed, I don't know, I tried to write them down, about 8, I guess, changes. Should we have her list them, or, we started with the amenities, 5,500 square feet of ground floor retail, 2 charging stations per level, 1 bike storage spot for every 3 units, 40% 2 bedrooms. She mentioned that the utilities and transformers would be in the back, something about the balconies and add dimensions to the plan.
Yes.
Is that everything, Mary Ann? And Rose, do you think we hit all the changes that we made?
It is everything. Yep.
That's everything
Okay.
in my notes. I guess I could get together with Mary Ann or
Oh,
just,
wait, there is one more right at the very beginning. The ability for the planning board to grant a deviation for the number of restaurants. If there's unusual circumstances that the planning board finds that the restaurants wouldn't be viable. Other than that, those are.
All right, so that's 9, I guess 9 items, and Mr. Vito, you'll get together with Mary Ann and specifically write them out as part of the plan.
yes.
Okay, so at this point, I guess, would one of the members like to make a recommendation for the acceptance and approval of the redevelopment plan?
I'll make a recommendation.
Mr. Graziano, did you,
That was me, yes.
and who seconded it?
Second.
And
Yeah,
Mr.
who was it?
Corrado seconded it.
Yes.
Okay. Corinne, would you like to call the roll, please?
Sure. Chairman Venero,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Corinne, could you repeat that?
Chairman Venero said yes, and Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Banda,
Yes.
Bove,
Yes.
Graziano,
Yes.
Guaman,
Yes.
Nagarado,
Yes.
Mayor Melham,
Yes.
Mr. Zangari,
Yes.
Mr. Guyen's,
Yes.
approved.
Thank you. Let's see. Next up, we had PB 2011, 11 Franklin Avenue, block 2301, lot 1, 11 Franklin Redeveloper LLC. Proposed amendments to Roche Diagnostic Redevelopment Plan by CME Associates. This has been withdrawn. Rose, is there any further announcement? Mr. Vito, any further announcement we need to make other than it's been withdrawn?
No, just that anyone here at the meeting tonight that is wanted to be heard on this application, they can come back and hear it on the next meeting date, which is February, Corinne, February
11th. I'm just not 100% sure if they will go forward with it, but it will always be posted on the website, so.
Okay, so for now, it's February 11th. There'll be no new notices. If it's adjourned for any reason again, it'll be placed on the record like tonight.
Thank you. And then we also have an adjournment, which is PB 2010, 224 Washington Avenue, block 8701, lot 1. They request for an adjournment without further notice until the February 11th, 2021 meeting. And with that said, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make
Make
a
a
motion.
motion.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.